Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me, the one, the only, the guy that makes this whole thing work, David Morassutti.
How are you doing on this really, really rainy evening?
Yeah, it's been raining all day, and I've been out there, and I got a bum knee, and the knee's getting bummier. Is that a word, bummier? No,
Probably not.
bummery? No,
Mhm.
something. I don't know. It's not feeling good anyway. Yeah, so here we are. Week one is just around the corner, and it finds for openers, week one, of course, the Argos are going to be not playing, so you and I don't get to go to BMO to check out a football game or watch a game with them on TV because it ain't happening for them. But regardless, there were some games that happened this week, and they were included in the mix. There
Mhm.
were 5 games played, 10 teams played, but there's only 9 teams in the league. Oh, yeah, Saskatchewan played twice. How do you like that?
Man, it was such somebody was asking me about that. They're like a Tuesday game, a CFL game on a
That's
Tuesday.
a CFL thing.
I'm like CFL has nine teams. They got to get everyone to play all two of their games.
And that's one way to do it. That's what happens when you have a small league that's on an uneven number. See, if there are more teams, it wouldn't matter as much, right? Because
Nope.
it wouldn't happen as often to a team. So, yeah, it'll be great when Halifax joins the group, which is going to happen. I have faith. I believe Halifax will join the Canadian Football League. Did you hear that the CFL appointed a new chair to its board of governors?
Yeah, Mel Lastman is no longer with the board.
Yeah,
His replacement.
Scott Banda.
Don't know this gentleman too well.
You don't know him too well? Well, he's retired from what he was doing. I'm looking here at the press release that
Yeah.
the CFL provided, and thank you CFL for providing it. Um, so it says here the CFL has appointed Scott Banda as the 40th chair of the Board of Governors. Banda, who recently retired from CEO of Federated Cooperatives Limited, that's FCL, which isn't the CFL. You said jumbled letters. It's almost the CFL. Brings to his new role extensive experience as an executive, legal counsel, and board member, along with a passion for sport and a reputation for prioritizing people and community. So he's honored to be a part of this. We got to have this guy on the show. We got to find out what's on his mind. We're going to find out how he's steering this organization, because we just heard on one of the partners, Larry Tannenbaum. Did you hear what he said?
I was trying. I was gonna hope you were gonna bring that up because I thought
It's
that
brought up.
I was not
Shock?
surprised.
Shock? First of all, to hear him say something. That
Yeah,
was that
that was
was
probably the surprising part because Frank, you and I know that
yeah.
MLSE hasn't been very vocal and very public about the Argos in terms of it was they've been trying very hard to keep this they're going to support the Argos, but everything that happened, with the XFL stuff, we hadn't heard anything from MLSE concrete about it, right?
Right.
This kind of maybe we should give a little bit of context for this interview. So Larry Tannenbaum did an interview with the Globe and Mail, and the title of it was mainly about the Leafs, right?
Right.
The headline: MLSE chairman Larry Tannenbaum feels Leafs fans' pain, promises a Stanley Cup. Famous last words, Larry. Famous last words. But literally the final thing in that interview. I'll read the. Maybe I'll read it, just so people can get the full context of it. So he was being asked about his NFL interest.
Right. That they're still alive. He confirmed that.
Yeah, would a Toronto get a women's pro soccer league or a pro women's basketball team? And he says MLSC is looking at it strategically to see if it will work. And then the final question, I should actually name the reporter who did this article, Simon Hoop Hoop
Bielaski.
Bielaski. Okay. He asked Tannenbaum, I do have to ask about the Argos because the CFL seems constantly in trouble. Is there a solution to the league's challenges? His first thing he said, and I'll listen to these words very carefully. Yeah, I thought so, and I was working on it. Past tense. But I'm not sure there's alignment among some of the other ownership groups of the 8 other teams. The community owned teams seem to be satisfied with what's happening in the CFL.
Right.
So we're working to see how the Argos fit into that scenario. I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with the structure of the league. My concern is in the major cities of Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, it's not attracted to the younger fan engagement.
Right.
You look at value creation, and quite unfortunately, these teams are not worth that much money. The hockey, basketball, and soccer teams are trading at hundreds of millions of dollars,
And billions.
in some cases, billions of dollars. And you see the Argos, a 106-year-old league, and what value creation are these franchises trading at? You've got to look at it and say, is that success?
Okay. So he cut to the chase. He basically says in his position, because he has he has viewpoints on sports in the North America, in the world, for example. So his view is clear. He knows what it's like to own professional franchise. He's in charge of some of he's in the biggest leagues in North America, which rate highly in the world. And by his judgment, the Toronto Argonauts and the Canadian Football League and the teams that they are not that valuable. We just saw that Stelco bought part of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, 40%, and so we're saying, or they're assuming, the team is worth less than 100 grand. And that's a contract for the Leafs minimum wage.
Yeah.
So just to put it in perspective, right? I mean, it's not much money, and there's a lot of work involved in running that franchise. There's a lot of money that needs to be invested. There's the rent at BMO, its value, the rental value at BMO. If you want to rent the stadium for a night, what is that worth? So I'm not here taking the side of Larry Tannenbaum and MLSC, but I am pointing out a simple fact. The CFL does not make that much money. They are not worth that much money on the open market. The dichotomy here is with the Canadian Football League is, I'm convinced, as many like me are, that the Canadian Football League is a part of Canadiana. It is a heritage sport in this country by virtue of how long it's been around. We heard that number come out, 106, in the interview. And by the way, I made a mistake. The contact, I mentioned the contact. The guy who actually wrote the article is Simon Hooped. But anyway, my mistake. Okay. I apologize. So, I guess on my part of this conversation with you is Tannenbaum's not happy with the value of the Toronto Argonauts. I
And of
think
the
more
league as well.
importantly, it's not worth more than it was when he bought it, which I think is a real concern for a businessman. If it was incrementally more valuable today over when he originally bought it, whether we go back to when he bought it along with TSN, not Rogers, or when Rogers came into the fold, regardless, I don't think this team has increased in value. I know the league hasn't increased in value. For now, I would like to blame the pandemic, but the near future will tell us, make it more clear as to what and how this league is trending right now, and the Argos in particular.
I mean, we've been at this was a main part of our conversation this whole off season in that there are a lot of people I feel like, and this is I think what Tannenbaum is kind of saying. There are quite a few teams that seem to be very content with how the CFL is run.
The community teams,
Yeah,
because David, they're not putting money in the bank,
they don't need to.
right? They're not supposed to. That's the thing.
So when you and we said that the current tier of ownerships makes the CFL a bigger challenge than any other league has to deal with. Because what other league, if you look at even what Toronto has, what other league, MLSC is, they don't go up against community based teams. TFC doesn't. You
Nope.
know, the Leafs and Raptors don't. Even the Marlies don't. Right? Like this is something that, you know, this is
There
where,
are a couple in the NFL though, Green Bay and anyway,
but they still
but they're
they're
there for
still
profit. They
They,
make
but
a
again,
profit.
and see, this is where I think Tannenbaum even he thinks that they're happy with what's going on, but that's not like just happy to break even isn't good enough for a lot of things, right? Um, I think what he's trying to say here is they want to do more, but it feels like the CFL makes it tough for them to really do what they want to do. Although there's been a lot of fans who have come out against Tannenbaum and saying, "Well, has MLSE really done a lot to market the team?" But here's the problem. I think this is the problem that Tannenbaum is saying. What are you marketing to Toronto, to Montreal, and even in Vancouver? I think what he was trying to say is that these other leagues that these other owners have. Let's say even Montreal with the Canadians. We're talking about elite multi-million dollar athletes that are a lot easier to market in a city like Toronto than it is like in Saskatchewan. Their riders, they don't have to go up against anybody else for star attention, for marketing dollars. MLSC has all their marketing dollars on the products that make them money. How are you going to put all the marketing dollars on the thing that unfortunately doesn't have the inch that you're not going to see a return on the investment because the people in Toronto just they don't gravitate towards that. I'll even bring one more thing into it, and I'll let you. I'll ask a question of you, Frank. I look at the CEBL, the Canadian League Basketball
Mhm,
League. That is a very small organization, but
mhm.
they were the talk of the town because J. Cole, a rapper, and Drake were at a game in Scarborough this past weekend. The amount of buzz and hype. That's I think what MLSC is trying to get at here. When you
And didn't
get
they have a 40-year-old rapper actually play in a game?
actually playing a game, he might not be good. He wasn't
He got
very
a three-pointer.
Yeah, he wasn't very good in that game, but that wasn't the story. The story was here is the biggest star. Drake is the biggest artist in Canada right now.
Right.
In Canada, he was at this game. His part, his like fingerprints are on this league as well. They did a good job of capturing that and marketing that. What MLSC is probably trying to say is we need that. That's what we need to sell the Argos.
Like the Leafs have Justin Bieber, the Raptors have Drake.
Yeah, the Raptors
There's
would not be where they are right now if they didn't have this partnership with Drake.
Drake does Drake did, and the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
It was, with the Raptors winning the championship and Drake, was along for the ride prior to the championship. So it wasn't like he just jumped on board when things started looking rosy. He was there for a few years before. But the thing of it is that I guess what it comes down to, Dave, and this is a sorrowful thing for me to say because I love the CFL, it just doesn't have the magic that some other leagues do.
Hmm.
Um, why doesn't it have the magic? we'll go full circle here, and I will add to what Tannenbaum, what your interpretation of what Tannenbaum is saying. So, folks, this isn't about you know dumping on the other teams in the CFL or dumping on community teams. This is about business and how to improve business. When Tannenbaum said that the community teams were happy with the way things are, I wasn't joking when I said, well, they don't need to make money. They don't have they don't have profit as their driver. Their driver is that it's a community sport. The Edmonton Elks, beautiful example. Their money goes into the community, their profit. Saskatchewan Roughriders, same kind of deal. Winnipeg, again, same kind of deal. Now that's central Canada. We're not talking about Montreal or BC. Now that leaves Calgary. Calgary's got one foot in being that kind of team and also being a business because they're owned by the National Hockey League's Calgary Flames. So they, like Tannenbaum, have the same example reminder idea that they'd like to pursue, which is let's see how much money our team can be valued at next year, the year after that. How high a value can we put on this team? Well, unfortunately, both groups don't look at things the same way. If you're MLSC, you're saying we want this to be big league. How do we make it big league? Well, there's risks that have to be taken. There's ideas that have to be hatched, and they have to be successful too. While the community teams, I guess, you know, if they're happy with the way things are, it's because they don't need things to be other than entertaining for their 18, 20, 25,000 fans that show up max.
No, for sure. It's going to be it's going to continue to be like this until something significantly changes.
Well, unfortunately, it's going to run aground. The reason it's going to run aground, I don't want to use a boat term being covering the Toronto Argonauts, but we've got two people that want the league to go in two different directions. Two groups of people want the league to go in two different directions or get to a place in a different way. Maybe they even want to get to the same place, but they don't seem to want to do it in the same way. That's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. They got to get on the same. They got to get on the same page, and I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I'm just wondering who's like what's it going to take to get on the same page?
Well, is it a coincidence that an article's released around the same time a new board of governors boss is appointed? The MLSC Glassman's gone. He goes. And now the new guy, Scott Banda's in. And all of a sudden, talk from the big poobah MLSC about the Canadian Football League. Um, you know, is this, I don't want to call it, I don't want to do the whole show on this, but I guess to summarize, is this a call to action that may be followed up with a decision if, things don't, if Tannenbaum's wishes don't come true, do MLSC decide to put the team up for sale? Is that a possibility in your mind?
I think it's a possibility. I think he was the biggest backer of getting the Argos too. Remember because
Yep,
if I'm not mistaken, it was him and Bell
that's right.
that got involved first.
Right.
Then MLSC because Rogers came aboard.
Absolutely. 2 years later.
To your to literally just after the Argos won that Grey Cup,
Absolutely.
right? I think, yeah. I mean, with the way that MLSC is pretty much run, and the way that the Leafs and everyone else is run, Tannenbaum has he is the voice. We don't hear from the other owners. He is the voice. So if he's not happy, I'm pretty sure the rest of the MLSE board is definitely not happy. And if, in my opinion, I've always said the CFL has made a big mistake in not listening to a franchise that has pretty much every team running. It's in terms of business wise, running pretty good. TFC, some might argue. Well, I hear people argue, "Oh, the money is they don't have a lot of money, and
Their
sorry, they don't have
value
a
is
lot
pretty
of
good,
TV
though.
viewers." I don't know about you. I'm pretty sure TFC games have pretty good atmospheres. Nobody's complaining about how many fans are going to TFC games.
Well, let's stay on subject. The point is, and what Tannenbaum was talking about was value, and TFC's value may not be 1.8 billion like like the Leafs, but it's a little more than what you know the value of the Argos. And that's what he's talking about. Those numbers. It's the value of the team. How much capital is it generating for the company? And I beg to suggest that it would not surprise me that the Argos don't really add anything financially to MLSC and their bottom line. Um, I don't think it should matter, considering I think they owe the community the Argos, that is, they owe the community the Argos. I think they do. Um, I consider it, even if it's a loss leader, MLSC, with what they collect, in the sports world in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, if you want to keep going, because, let's be clear here. The Toronto Raptors are Canada's basketball team. They're the reason why the CEBL is as good as it is and as popular as it is. The Raptors have been a big part of awakening um, the realization of how popular basketball is in Canada. I know how popular it was in Toronto. I did high school games back in the 80s and 90s, and the excitement level was fantastic. I also did university football. I did high school football. Um, the excitement is what we're talking about here. Can the CFL, is it willing to do its best to create an exciting game that people talk about, like you're suggesting? That's the challenge in the greater scheme of things. If you're thinking like Larry Tannenbaum, if you're thinking like a community-owned team that's going, look, we're making enough money, we're sending enough money to local football and charities and Aboriginal folks, we're doing great. Okay, we're happy with the way it is. We don't want to screw up what we got going here, because we don't want to risk what we have for what we hope we can get, right? A bird in the hand type thing is the
Mhm.
debate, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean I think that's probably also where the disconnect is, right? At least in Canada, we know that there's a connection between people who play hockey and those who watch the Leafs. People who play basketball watch the Raptors. People who play soccer watch TFC. Play baseball,
Golf
watch the Blue Jays. Even I'm trying to think of another one. I mean, even soccer with Canada Soccer. The CFL, unfortunately, they don't have that international appeal because there isn't there's no international football thing that they can at least point to. It's all about the leagues, right?
or the NFL.
Right? They don't have the NFL, right? And so they don't have this thing. I think this is where maybe Ambrosi thought by growing the global footprint of the
And
CFL
he's
brings
right about it. He's right about it. If he could make happen what he is trying, David, if he could, really help get the people in Canada who aren't first generation Canadians to, discover football, things would be a lot better in this country, because all three, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, have have a lot of first generation Canadians there, new Canadians.
and this is where I get somewhat annoyed when I hear some of the comments from CFL fans in that, you know, unfortunately, look, Canadian players can't sell the games in certain places. But in Toronto, I'm gonna go out and say I guarantee Chad Kelly will be more of a sell than the Club Ethel Thompson or even Andrew Harris in some ways. A lot of people who don't watch the CFL but watch football know who Chad Kelly is. If I tell somebody who doesn't watch football who Chad Kelly is, they likely know who it is. If I say, "Do you know who McLeod Bethel Thompson is?" I would get crickets. I would get, and that's not a shot at McLeod Bethel Thompson. It's the reality of the CFL exposure,
And
okay,
cachet. If
and
I could use that
cachet
word too.
is nowhere near. And Chad Kelly was a star in the NCAA. He was not a star in the NFL,
No.
right? But he had the cachet because he was a good player in the NCAA.
And
You know,
his uncle is well known around these circles because a lot of Canadians from this area
yep,
would go to Buffalo Bills games, and guess who their quarterback was? His uncle.
exactly. A lot of Canadians know who Doug Flutie is because not only did he play in the CFL, but he played in the NFL.
And the USFL.
Okay, nah, USFL. Even I
Like
know.
the New Jersey Devil Generals. Devil.
Yeah.
All right. Throw shade on the USFL.
But this is where I'm getting at here. In that, unfortunately, in this league, you know, I the Canadian players are definitely important because we need some basis of having some sort of pipeline in this country because without Canadians, this league does not survive. But
Oof.
unless we're finding a way to show off these Canadians in some way, whether it be in the NCAA or you prop up U Sports, I just don't see how you're gonna get the Canadian football game to
We
out.
got to get it. It's real simple, David. We got to get Sportsnet involved. Sportsnet needs to get involved in the Canadian Football League, and they have to compete in producing programming that you know the CFL has to get out there. And no, and it can't do it by itself. It's no different than me going to City Hall and screaming in the town square. That doesn't do me any good. But if City TV comes to me and says, "Hey, Frank, want to do an interview?" I mean, come on. That's what it's about. It's about getting, you know, getting
What are
getting out
people?
there, you
How are
know?
people consuming all their sports? We only have
That
one newspaper that's covering the Argos on a consistent basis. I did see Mark Zwolinski of the Toronto
the
Star,
sun the sun
who,
does some, the star does some, yeah.
but there isn't consistency in like if you go to a Leaf game, if you go to a Blue Jays game and you go to an Argo game, it is night and day the coverage. Even TFC gets more coverage from everywhere else. And I think that's really the problem. Maybe the CFL needs to figure out new ways to get out there. And I think it's through digital. I think definitely, sports that doesn't have to cover it on TV. But yeah, radio, podcasting, articles on the website. But there's no value in it because they don't have a stake in it.
Well, there's also, you know, there has to be interest, when they it's all about clicks. That's what we call it today. In the old days, we called it advertising. Is there anybody willing to advertise so that even if Sportsnet got involved in the Canadian Football League, is there anybody interested in advertising? But somehow somebody has to build up, what's going on with, um, it just to me, uh, well, listen,
I think
Tannenbaum
the
said his
CFL just
piece.
needs
If
to be.
I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap this up, and all I'm going to say is, if the most important guy in charge in the with the deepest pockets in the Canadian Football League, that happens to be a part of the ownership group for the Toronto Argos, asks the question of the league and their teams and their value, and suggesting that their value is way too low, he's saying that the league is, I'm not saying worthless, but frankly not worth it. That's what I'm hearing when I read that article. Go ahead. So how does that change? I
You
don't
know
know.
how it changes?
Give it to me.
CFL needs to become more trendy.
Yeah, well, that's
No, it
great.
does. In my
I
opinion,
agree, but
you have to create a buzz, right? You can't expect someone else to do it for you. You have to create the buzz. I look at what other leagues are doing: CEBL, WNBA. all those other leagues that have gone a younger fan base is because there's trending. They're trending. I think on social media it should definitely be more out there. Get the players involved more in that regard. Let people see that the CFL can be fun, and then maybe other people start paying attention. Because when other people are talking about it on the Twitter machine, as the older people like to call it, that Twitter machine, guess what? A lot of other networks pay attention because if people are looking at it on there, they want to get the people from Twitter to their networks. So that's where you got to attack it. In my
Okay.
opinion, that's where I have to go.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's take a look at more important issues that we can really bite into, and that is, of course, the games this week. And the week began with Saskatchewan at home to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They lost 25-16. The Winnipeg defense, they they showed us why they've been a really good team over the years. Saskatchewan is trying to work things out, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's been an interesting week with like keeping track. First off, keeping track of two games was very very interesting because
Mhm.
I don't know how the coaching staff. I guess maybe it's tough because they have to quickly make those adjustments and changes and look at both of these games. But yeah, I know it was a very interesting week for them. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So, well, Dakota Prukop, who spent some time in Toronto, um, he was 7 to 12, 215 yards, not bad. Drew Brown's the guy that's supposed to do it for them, and Dakota. I've always had this idea that Dakota's a big play quarterback, and you know, um, I think he showed in this game that he does have that ability.
Yeah, you know what? Like it takes some guys. It takes a little time to get there. Um, with the right opportunity, I think yeah, Dakota Prukop can be at least for Winnipeg. If I was Winnipeg, there's no doubt that Dakota Prukop is my backup now. In my opinion, Drew Brown, from what I saw in that one game he had last season and what I've seen from him in preseason, I don't see it in terms of a backup quarterback. Maybe as that, if they want to use him on those short yardage, sure. But I think Dakota Prukop has proven to be a more exciting player. He can create both with his legs and through the air, which
So
I saw
is he a third and short option? Do you think?
for
Because
Dakota.
that's the backup. They always look at the backup. That's an advantageous ability.
If he's one, I think he could probably do it. Whether he can or uh, whether that's what they want him to do,
They got an interesting situation. Like Drew Brown's a better short yardage guy than I think he's a better candidate for that.
that's what I also hate too. I don't want to see a guy make the team because he's a better at the short yardage and not because he's the better quarterback.
Well, I hear you. I agree with you. But sometimes decisions are made based on you know a
Yeah,
system.
I don't know. I think that you got to go with the better player. In my opinion, that's what I would do. But again, I don't run the team, unfortunately. Um, it's because they're all three on the roster. They all three made the final cuts. It will just be interesting to see do they because now you can only dress two quarterbacks. It looks like
That's
probably
it.
Dakota will be sat. But if Zach Claros goes down in a game, if you're a Winnipeg fan, are you more convinced that Drew Brown is the guy we have to go with because the other guy has to be sat because we need a third yardage quarterback?
I know. I know. It's an issue. It's an issue. Um, I like the kid. Um, well, goodness, he carried the ball 6 times for 74 yards, almost half of it on one carry. So you're right. His legs are what makes him valuable, and also I'm telling you, I like his arm and I like his ability to make big plays. And I really think that he's the guy that comes in to replace Zach Claros if he gets hurt. I truly believe that. Drew Brown's an old-fashioned drop back passer. That's who he is,
Mhm.
you know. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Um, what did you think of, or what do you think of the quarterbacks that played for Saskatchewan? Mason Fine, Jake Dolagala, and Troy Williams. Mason Fine had the better statistics in that game.
He did. He definitely did. He was, he had a decent night on the ground too. Um, with Saskatchewan, it's interesting because do I see any of them as that guy that can again step up? We all think about Cody Fajardo has been very durable in his career, but we also know
Mhm.
that he's had very close calls as well,
Yeah, yes, uh,
right? And so
absolutely. We
I
also know that he tempts fate as well. You know, he's the third down quarterback, right? On first down.
exactly right. So he's the guy that you can have out there. Um, I think it'll likely be fine that you'll see back there because first off, he took more of the snaps. He had more of the completion. No, he just got more of the playing time. So that's where I would lean towards. Uh, that's I think I don't want to say it because it'll be such a punny thing, but I think he will be fine.
Oh, very funny.
Uh,
Okay.
but yeah,
You know what else is fine? The
pardon.
running game for Winnipeg. They
Oh
ran for 194 yards.
yeah,
Saskatchewan's a pretty
it
good run
helps
defense.
when Prukop was the leading rusher at 74 yards.
There you go.
But
They figure out a way to run the ball. This is the thing about Winnipeg, they run the ball down your throat and then pass you to death.
yeah, I think that's going to be what keeps. I mean, that's what's kept Zach Rolero's upright quite a bit is the fact that you have to respect the run game with them.
Yeah, and good for them. So Saskatchewan loses their first of two in 1 week, in less than a week, that is. They lose 25-16 to Winnipeg. Um, the next game is Ottawa against Montreal. This was a back and forth affair.
Yep.
Two teams, one that we expect to take a step forward because it's the way they've trended, they being the Montreal Alouettes. And you and I both have preached the value of what the Ottawa Red Blacks have done in the off season. Sean Burke has been active and has made all what I consider all the important moves, starting at quarterback. And he's rebuilt the defense there. Ottawa used to have a great defense. Recently, not so much. They didn't have a good defense. They didn't have a good offense. This year, they have both. Both have improved drastically.
Mhm.
And this game was a perfect example of the progress that they've made. The Montreal Alouettes came into this game at home with serious intentions of winning. They brought a lineup that should have won this game. Ottawa almost stole it, David.
They did. This was an interesting game because I know that after the game there was some thoughts about the play of the quarterbacks for
Oh boy.
Montreal. Four interceptions with Vernon Adams and Trevor Harris combined, and they only had 130 passing yards
Mhm.
combined. Um, I think first off, Ottawa's defense continues to be the strength of that team, and that's where I think they said if we can get a quarterback, it would make things a lot easier for us as a team with a defense like that. Um, I think it's funny because Caleb Evans had the worst
Hmm.
of the three appearances with the quarterbacks on paper. So I'm wondering, I still, I'm wondering if he gets the backup role. I think he'll probably will. Um, but yeah, Ottawa, they made it very interesting because you know they kept it close. They both kept it close, and Montreal just barely squeaked it out. And I think if you're a Montreal fan, this is going to be a very interesting story. When you have two starting quarterbacks, guys who can start on the roster, there's going to be the talk. And Kahari Jones actually had to come out and say
Uh-huh.
Vernon Adams Jr. is our starting quarterback,
Mhm.
and I thought
3 of
that
the
was
3 interceptions in one game.
but even then, like, for him to have to come out and say that Vernon Adams is our starting quarterback, I would have thought, well, we already knew that. It's almost like he had to
Well, that's
reaffirm
because of what happened
it.
in the game. That kinda raised some questions,
Yeah.
don't you think? Like 3 interceptions will reporters will ask a question when you have Trevor Harris, a starting quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League the last 10 years. He's on your team, and, the starting quarterback's the guy that, you know, just threw 3 interceptions. So, and, his throwing percentage, 50% isn't, his number is not that, great.
Yeah, it's, I find it interesting because for Kahari to say that, I think it was also a message to Vernon to say, "We're
And
naming you our starting quarterback, but like, there's, like, almost like a, we have all the faith in you, but there's a guy behind you that we will put in if," like, the Montreal at some point is gonna have to figure this out, right? They're gonna have
well, you heard what Adam said, right? When they asked him, "Are you gonna start?" He says, "Well, it sounds like, I'm the starting quarterback." He didn't say it definitively, right? It was, "Well, it sounds like I'm the starting quarterback." It doesn't sound like, you have all your ducks in a row as far as, the faith of your coach. I think you're right. I think it's about confidence that the coach is mentioning his name just to keep him confident because you need 2 quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League.
you do. That's why, like, when we talked about those other teams, um, I feel like some teams just are just like they're gonna throw darts on a board and see which one hits closest to the middle, right?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have some nice conversation down the road a little bit if we can sneak it in. Okay, so Vernon Adams is starting quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes. I wouldn't count on that 100%. They beat the Ottawa Red Blacks at home 27-26. Good for them. They lined up opposite of BJ Cunningham. All I can say is BJ Cunningham, a forever Montreal Alouette, finds himself wearing the red and black.
Well, the interesting part too is that Quan Bray was released,
Yeah.
so like
And
I
then
know,
they picked up Chandler Worthy.
yep, which I'm glad to see Chandler
Another shot.
get another shot. We always like that. We never like to see guys lose their jobs. Um, I find it interesting because Montreal has talent, but it's a lot of raw talent. Like, we know Cunningham is what he can do.
Yeah,
Um,
big play guy.
yeah, they got a lot of guys that can make plays, but can they get it? It's almost like the time. It has to be timely too,
Yep,
in a way,
absolutely.
for this team. And so, I like. I'm also a big fan of the of their with Tyson Phil. Tyson, oh my God, I don't want to Philpott, sorry. And obviously Eugene Lewis. They got a good mix of both veterans and young guys that can kind of work together. It's just, can the quarterback elevate them? Or are
Absolutely.
they gonna have to elevate the quarterback?
Well, I think you can do both. Let's move on to the Argos and Ticats. Argos. This was, I mean, just replay a couple of the games last year. This game wasn't on TV, so for those of you that missed this game, just replay a couple of other, field goals at the end of the game to win it for Toronto over Hamilton. This was this talk about trending.
Yeah, I mean, boy, Boris Beatty, I think he remains
Worth
the
every
Argos' most valuable player going into this year.
worth every cent.
Yeah, if somebody was like, "Oh my god, like, how many, how much do we have to pay for, you know, a guy to be the, how much you're paying for a kicker?" And I'm like, "Well, guess what? If you're gonna get all those, if you're gonna get all those, if you need to get points, you got to get it from someone, right?" And the Argos have struggled to get touchdowns. I think their defense is going to be
Goodness.
good this year. I think they might be the best top 3 defense in the CFL. That's how good I think they can be.
Wow.
Just based on they got the veterans on the pass rush. If they can stay health will be a key one for them. But I think that the offense has to find a way to put touchdown.
David,
McLeod
how
has
does
to.
a quarterback move the team 187 yards and not get a touchdown?
That remains. I kind of I kind of want to ask.
I'm just asking.
I
Like,
want to ask Ryan Dinwiddie this, but not get him angry.
there's it's a question that yeah, it'll draw a lot of ire, but I think it's a legitimate question. If you've got a quarterback that's moving the team 187 yards and there are no touchdowns, it begs the question. Chad Kelly moved the team 85 yards. Busy fella, threw for a touchdown and an interception.
He also, I think it was a short 5-yard
Yeah,
touchdown as well, so it wasn't like he threw for a big touchdown.
right.
I just think you know what the Argos need someone on that team has to step up and be the guy that can get them points in the end zone. Is it
I think also what should happen, and you're going to think I'm crazy, and the Argos are going to think I'm crazy, but they need Bethel Thompson. If it's short yardage into the end zone, keep him in there and let him get the touchdown. He needs to feel the success of a touchdown. This is a guy that deserves a better fate than he's had over the past few years with the progress that he's made, the numbers that he's put up there, and the touchdowns he hasn't thrown or had. Or, I want to see him spike the ball for his own sake, not for my sake, not for Argo fans' sake, but for his own sake to spike the ball and, hey, touchdown. There it is. Help spur his confidence. I would have him run in if they get a short opportunity at the at the end zone.
that was
So
always the one thing they struggled with too is like they would get within the 10 yards of the end zone and they wouldn't really have. I think this is where Andrew Harris will come into play too.
yeah,
Like,
that's the hope.
right, I think they're saving his legs. He's not getting any younger.
Yeah,
Um,
yep.
I think they're really trying. They're,
Management.
they're trying to manage his workload, so I think he will help. But yeah, I think Bethel Thompson can help with that too. I just think he has to trust someone to make a play for him. I think Eric Rogers being injured doesn't help. I think he was going to be counted on to be that end zone threat, the red zone threat. They got a lot of guys that can do that, but someone's going to have to step up and be that guy.
Yeah, I just don't think it isn't because Bethel Thompson can't. It's because he hasn't. It's like he is. He needs that breakthrough moment. Where that confidence will shoot up. He is a very proud guy. He's a guy who takes things. He takes things to heart. I think you and I can agree on this. He's a guy who cares a lot, and he's very passionate. And we saw what happened at the end of last year. That wasn't a guy who was angry. That was a guy who was hurting. If you know Macbeth at all, this isn't an angry guy. This is a guy who's hurting, who wants to help the team. The team means everything to him. So that's why I'm saying let the guy punch it in, let him spike the ball, and let's go from there and see what happens.
I think Ryan Dewey would want nothing more than to see Bethel Thompson. I don't think he really. I don't think at this point Argos fans would care if he passes it into the end zone or if he runs it in.
Long as he gets it in the end zone. A lot of people have it in for him because of the fact that it's clear. I mean, they see the same numbers we do, David, and they get to decide how they feel about it without caring about looking people in the face when they ask a question. You know, it's really easy to be a fan sometimes, and to cover the team is a little harder because now we're dealing with the human side because I'm looking at a human being. I'm not looking at a guy who's a football player on a team that I don't know anything about or don't know. So, it is what it is. So the Argos win 18-17, a late field goal, seconds to go in the game. They win the game, final preseason game. We talked about Calgary all this offseason, talking about how this is a team that if there's a team that's motivated more than Calgary, please show me which team it is.
You know what? This is again, as we said, this is a team that's taking no prisoners. Like
Yep, they're on fire. They're
You
they're
know
on a
they don't give out awards for teams in preseason. Oh, I'm pretty sure Calgary deserves award for best preseason team. Um, I think you're not. I think you're lying if you said you're not. Well, if you're in the West, you're not worried about Calgary having a
be worried.
resurgence.
Be worried because they're in the hunt for first place. They're not talking about making the playoffs, and they're not talking about finishing first. They're not talking. They're showing what they want, and they're showing they wish to the word that we all love in sports, dominate.
No, yeah, that's what it was, right? It wasn't that Winnipeg. I mean, sorry, Winnipeg. Calgary was winning all those games, especially in 2016 and 2017, 2018. They were dominating games. You would go into Calgary and you were almost expected to lose,
And
especially
bad.
if you're in the East.
Well, if you're the Argos, you can remember in recent history the kind of kicking you took from them.
I just remember many were just the Argos were just like if we can just limit them in one game in the Grey Cup, we can win this. But they know that if Calgary got their rhythm, and the weather didn't help in
Not
that game.
didn't help Calgary, and people say it helped Toronto, but it was the big play, Ricky Ray. That's what won it for them. They had a receiver that could make it happen, and good for them. To Calgary, though, Bo Levi Mitchell's admitted what we've said all along during the offseason, all last year, that there's an injury there. There's something wrong. He doesn't look right, and he wasn't. And he says he wasn't. Now the question is, unfortunately, with the older body, recovery is not as simple as it is when you're younger. Hopefully, he can find some health, and we can see again one of the greatest quarterbacks in recent memory in the Canadian Football League do his thing.
I really do wonder if this is the swan song for Bo Levi Mitchell.
Well, last year Riley retired. Why did he retire? It just got to be too much for him. I think. At some point, you know that you don't have that many kicks at the can. You know that the steam room can only help so much, ice can only help so much. Health is a priority in people's minds. At some point, the dream of being a football player becomes less important than the dream of living your life with your family and living a healthy life. So this is the reality of sports. It's the reality of football, which is one of the most brutal sports to human beings. Uh, Post-career football players, I think, are the ones who are the most challenged physically. They need to be admired, and that's why I admire football players, because they really are committed.
No, they definitely are. I think the fact that he didn't want to give up easily, I think it shows. Some people are like, oh, why doesn't he? Why doesn't you know what? He's had such a great career. He's accomplished a lot. Why isn't he just if he's not physically able to do it, why is he continuing? There's a pride element to it, right? You kind of want to give it all you got, and you want to be able to say for yourself, okay, I've done all I can. I know it's done for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
if
Oh,
if you if there's still a desire, look, Ricky Ray was another one of those, right? I think Bo Levi Mitchell and Ricky Ray are kind of similar in that regard because many people thought Ricky Ray should have retired after 2016
the
when he
punctured one.
right. I remember that season. It was a lost season for the Argos. He had brutal injuries. What did he do? He came back in 2017 and he won the Grey Cup.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. BC Lions beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders 20-18. The BC Lions uh, played the way many of us hoped that they would. Their new owner has tried to build a team. Their belief in O'Rourke, I think he looked really good in that game. I'll give
Him
you
and
60
O'Connor.
seconds.
I think the going with the two young Canadians. The first game didn't look so great. Second game, okay, that's what we expect. A little bit better. Um, Dominic Grimes, I thought he looked really good in that game. The 45-yard catch. I think this is going to be the most exciting team to watch, but also the most volatile team to watch because I think they're going to try to be the most exciting team in the league, and it can pay
Absolutely.
off dividends, or can
And
balance.
Burnham and Rourke have to develop a rapport, because that's the guy that stirs the drink. Thanks, David, for this.
No problem, Frank.
I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank.